What's interesting with the sex question, which a lot of that is racially driven, and then you have a lot of men who they don't explain that part properly because there's an image of the oversexed African, where we get even from the movie Birth of a Nation, where you had these caricatures of these African men running around kidnapping white women and grabbing and throwing them into bushes and things like that. So that's still kind of ingrained in the psyche of men. Sex is one of the things that comes of it, but a lot of people don't understand that there's now more of a demand of sex. You know, so for instance, if you have a man who's single, he calls a woman when he feels like it to have sex. If he's tired that week, I'm taking a week off. Whereas opposed to when you're in a polygynous situation and you may have women who are spaced out in terms of being able to see you by 3 or 4 days, you're expected to be able to perform in a certain way. So that means now you have to make sure your testosterone is still at a certain level. You have to eat a certain way. Can't have too many processed foods. Can't have a whole lot of processed sugars. Things like that that would bring your libido down. So now there's actually more of a demand. And you also have more than one woman now eyeing you. You know, a lot of times you'll have, especially in American culture, you know, a man will marry one woman, but then he'll have prostitutes that he deals with and mistresses and so forth and so on. And it's kind of easy. He's got more flexibility and flex room to sneak around and do those things. There's no accountability. If you have 3 or 4 wives, then you have just that many eyes looking at you and calling you and texting you and asking where you're at. Yeah, it keeps you on your toes. Exactly. You know, and the same thing for the women. I think one of the things I wanted to address when you brought up the sex is a lot of times women speak about the risk that they put themselves at because there's now other women in the mix. So they're exposed to a greater breadth of possible STD. Could you address that?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, we know that it is rare you're going to find, you know, say five young virgins, you know, and add them to your cipher. I mean, it's just unrealistic to expect that. And a lot of the times, a lot of the women that we take on, they may have had 5, 10, 15, or even more sex partners. I mean, this is a reality. I'm so glad we're addressing the sexual issues here. Because that's a reality that a lot of men don't want to look at, and they are still on the search for like 10 virgins who are going to just pop out of the blue. And it's just not like that, especially if you have older consorts who, you know, they've been around the block a time or two, okay?
Right.
It's a good idea to get tested. You know, there's certain tests that are better than others, and I'm actually researching, I've been researching lately some better tests rather than the ones that people are so used to, because the technology is always changing. You know, things in the medical industry are always changing. By the time the book comes out, almost 6 months from now, there's going to be something else. So I'm gonna be naming those tests in the book. But in the meantime, yeah, we need it, brother. We need it. And, you know, this isn't ancient Africa where the women were virgins. You ain't been sleeping around as a man. You know, it's just not. A lot of us have slept with 10, 20, sometimes 50 or 100 women before we got married or more. I mean, I know of a brother who's had nearly 1,000 women, okay? And he's only a few years older than me. And I'm 35.
And I'm sure that wasn't all with a condom on either.
Oh, of course not. You already know that.
Yeah.
You already know that.
Right.
But so it's the tests are for the man and the women. It's a good idea to get tested. Now, we understand that, you know, sometimes you may not. I mean, this is just reality. Some people are not getting tested, but what we're trying to do is create a standard so that, you know, we all make sure that we're on point. Okay?
Right.
Everybody doesn't have a disease, but at the same time, you know, you don't want to necessarily take that risk either. But sometimes circumstances don't even allow you to get the test. You fell in with the woman and you had sex. And we know this happens in polygynous families. But at some point, after the fact, you want to get tested and then heal it when and where possible.
Right.